are we moving towards a one world government? And the answer is yes, we are. So we're going to talk about more of that. And the reason why we're talking about this today is because very soon we're going to be discussing then the mark of the beast. We'll talk about the false prophet. We'll talk about the Antichrist, and globalism really is what it's all about. What we'll talk about in Genesis 13 later on is it's going to be this mark, and this is going to be enforced on people. So right now, a lot of the technology you see today is setting the stage for this to take place. The technology is not necessarily bad or good, but the Antichrist will use this technology to control every single person. And now we know through the phones that really they can keep the tabs on every person. Now, if you don't want tabs on you, then don't carry this around with you. If you have most of the phones have a GPS. Anyone wonder why when you use Waze for when you drive, or Google Maps or something similar, how do they know the traffic? You ever wonder that? Ask yourself that question. For well, they know the traffic. It's because of this. And you're thinking, what does that have to do with it? They know where you are. Now, the good thing about that is if somebody would kidnap you and you had your phone on, police can get into your phone and find out where you are. But quite often the kidnappers will throw the phone away or whatever. But there are some good things about that. So signs of the times, are we moving towards one world government? Now I looked at some articles lately, and one of them is called Globalist New World Order Delayed, the Rebalancing of Power as Trump Returns. Now we'll talk about this as we go, and probably talk about more next week. But there's a reason why there's a lot of people trying to take Trump out. Because Trump is for nationalism. Now, what is nationalism as opposed to globalism? Globalism as opposed to nationalism. Which one would be secure borders? Which one? I'm not making any political statement, just as a statement of fact. Which one of those, this is your pop quiz for the morning, which one would be, again, we have nationalism over here, globalism over here. Okay, so which one would promote an open borders? Globalism. Which one would promote, borders are actually biblical. And we will maybe do more about that later on. But when Paul spoke in Acts 17 to people in Athens, he mentioned borders there. So there is a lot of my friend Andy Woods did, I think probably like a whole hour he spent. In 2016, he did a wonderful series called The Bible and Voting. He's at Sugarland Bible Church in Houston area, Sugarland, which is near Houston. And now he's making that whole series, I think, into a booklet. I think he's providing soon. That was 16 parts, but he spent at least an hour just on that one thing. The Bible does promote nationalism and borders. So why would then the globalists want open borders? So yeah, and why would they want, and some of these questions are similar, why would they want to tank the economy?
Crash the country.
Crash the economy, crash it. There's a reason for that. Now there's a lot of people in power right now they don't realize they're being used by Satan, but they are. Now the people that are very high up, these are the Rockefellers, these are the Soros, you've maybe seen some of these names. If you get my PowerPoints and look at the notes, you can't see my notes at the bottom, but those you get my PowerPoint later, you can see all the documentation, quotes from people. But Soros, S-O-R-O-S, World Economic Forum, United Nations, and the World Banks, all these organizations, they want to move everything towards globalism. So getting back to the same question I asked, and why would you want to tank the economy? What's the answer to the U.S. going down the drain? Anyone know, by the way, what the national debt, not to depress you, it is what it is, what the national debt is right now? It might shock you if you Google the world debt clock. I say you might not want to do that because you can see it going like this, really fast. 36 trillion. Now, a lot of us have a hard time visualizing trillion. I'm guessing that most of you don't have $1 trillion in your bank account, right? Or even a billion, or probably even a million. So 36 trillion. It really is an unbelievable amount of money. So that's what the debt keeps on going up. So back to the question. Open borders, just two things. Open borders, crashing the economy. So why would Satan want that? What's the remedy for a country going down the drain? Now, we haven't even talked about spiritual yet. The U.S., what's going to cause the U.S. to go down the drain is not just the economy. It is what? Look at it morally. Yeah, the morality is going down. That's what has caused the ancient Roman Empire, Babylon, all these. Look at what Belshazzar was doing in Daniel chapter 5. And those of you in my Daniel Wednesday afternoon, we talked about this, that Daniel 4 and 5 are very similar. They're parallel. Daniel 4, Nebuchadnezzar was humbled. Have you ever been humbled before? Nod your head yes, because you probably have. I've been humbled more times than I can count. If I get too proud, and some of you heard me say this before, I'll say it again. The Lord can't, like this is an instrument for advancing the slides. It's not bad or good. So God can't use me as his instrument if I go what direction? If I get full of myself and people compliment me and I let it go to my head. That's why Ronnie and Eric and Jean and I, that's why we are accountable to each other. We watch each other. If one of us sees the other one going down a path that all of us know can't lead to anything good, then that's why God has allowed me to be humbled quite a few times. Well, Nebuchadnezzar was humbled. Didn't Daniel warn him? If you read the first part of Daniel 4, Daniel warned him with this vision, this dream he had of the tree. He warned him. He didn't take the warning. He went out to his palace, looked out his palace, looked out and saw the hanging gardens. Now, we don't know a lot about the hanging gardens, but they were incredible. We know enough to know they were incredible. So he looked out over Babylon and saw the hanging gardens, and he said, let's say hanging gardens, but he looked at Babylon, and he said, look at what I have done. Danger, danger, danger. And the words left his mouth, and what Daniel said would happen, God, through Daniel, it happened. He was humbled. Now, Belshazzar, the next chapter, is similar. God gave him a warning. They were sitting around drinking out of the goblets they took from the Solomon's temple. Real proudly. God humbled that very night. We know what day it was. It was Saturday night. Believe it or not, October 12th, 539 BC, King Cyrus. That very night, Belshazzar was humbled the ultimate way by dying. So what's going to bring the U.S. down is morally, if the U.S. continues morally to spit at God in the face, what do you guess is going to happen? Let's go back. Ancient Assyria. Where are they now? Very proud. You can go read Isaiah. When Isaiah, Hezekiah, and these kings were making fun of you. Look at all these countries we dominated, Assyria said. No one has been able to go against us. Well, where are they now? They fell through Babylon. Where's Babylon, ancient Babylon now? They thought they were too big for the britches. They got really proud. How about ancient Medo-Persia? How about ancient Greece? How about ancient Rome? They lasted for a long time. So we are moving towards that. So God God is really for nationalism. He's not for globalism. We're going to talk about Tower of Babel because what Satan's plan is for the future, we could call it the Tower of Babel Take Two. Now, you remember the Tower of Babel back in Genesis 11? We're talking about this tonight in an Old Testament panorama class in here at 6:30. So we'll get into this in more detail. So Genesis 1 through 10, very, very much global in its approach. Genesis 12 zooms in on which particular person. So Genesis 1 to 10, global in its scope, right? And then chapter 12 zooms in on Abraham. So Genesis 11, kind of like a transition. So this Tower of Babel, let's look at this. And next week we're going to do part 2. I'm going to talk a little bit more about next week, and then we'll get into the false prophet. Satan has used communism, socialism, and many organizations, including the United Nations, to steer the world towards a one-world government and globalism. So getting back to the question I asked before, if the U.S. economy is tanked and open borders, and then the U.S. comes down because of all these people coming in and causing it, not all to cause trouble. So if the U.S. then goes down, 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 again, one more time, it stresses, why would Satan want all these countries to go? What's the solution then to these issues? The New World Order. See? So Satan wants to do one more time. He's going to try one more time to do what he was trying in Genesis 11. So let's look at this. At one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. Is that necessarily a bad thing to do that? To speak the same, to have unity like that? Not necessarily a bad thing. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. Anyone know where Babylonia is today? Some of you might say Shinar. Where is Babylonia today? Babylon. Some of you are saying that it's the Persian Gulf, it's Iran. It used to be called Persia, they changed names to Iran. And by the way, the Antichrist will build Babylon. Isn't that interesting? Saddam Hussein tried to do it, but we know what happened with him. So he tried to build Babylon. So the Antichrist will have his headquarters in Babylon. And if the Lord tarries, Ronnie mentioned that, he could come noon or day or morning or whatever. If the Lord tarries, we'll get to Revelation 17 and 18. Both of those chapters describe Babylon. So then it's not necessarily wrong to have unity, but what if you're using that unity for something negative? Then it's not necessarily a good thing. So people migrated, and they were at the land of Shinar, and that's between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, if you find that. And then verse 3, they said, they began saying to each other, let's make bricks and harden them with fire. In this region, bricks were used instead of stone, and tar was used for mortar. So this is probably more than likely Moses adding this parenthetical comment to the parentheses there. So when Moses wrote this, he was writing people that were coming out of Egypt. They would have been real familiar with this time period. Because back then in this Babylonian plain, they didn't have too many stones. So what do you do if you want to build this big tower? Not stones, you use bricks. So is there anything wrong with making bricks? What are they making bricks for? Is it to build a structure to worship the Lord and praise Him? And have a big church service where they're... No, it's to do something for an ungodly purpose. Let's keep going. Then they said, come, let's build a great city for, what does it say next? For ourselves. Does that sound positive so far? With the tower that reaches into the sky. Now later on you're going to see somebody else say, come, let's. So look for that. Look for that phrase coming up. Come, let's. So now it's something negative. So we're going to make ourselves a city and a tower. So it's probably something like a ziggurat. And does this remind you of Lucifer? When I say Lucifer, who is that? Why did he fall? Yeah, some of you saying pride. He fell because of pride. It's interesting in 1 Timothy 3:6, as leaders, Gene and Eric and Ron and I have talked about this. And 1 Timothy 3 gives the qualifications of an elder or an overseer, pastor, really the same thing. And it says, and these qualifications for an elder, and not a new convert. Why? So why would you make a new, actually for obvious reasons, you would take a new convert. Oh, make this new convert an elder. No. Why? So that he will not become conceited and fall into the condemnation incurred by the devil. So it takes maturity as an elder not to go in the wrong direction and let things go to your head. So this reminds us of Lucifer's sin, which is pride. So the people of Babel, they sought to pridefully build a tower and make a name for themselves in defiance of the true God. So what happened with Lucifer? What did God do with him? Judged him. So take a guess, even if you haven't read this chapter before, let's say theoretically you never read this chapter, if you know what God did with Lucifer and what he did with many, many other people, there are so many kings that had a lot of pride. One king had a lot of pride, and he lit incense and he shouldn't have, because a priest only would do that, and God right away judged him immediately with leprosy. One of the Herods in Acts, when he was speaking in Caesarea, and I've been there many, many times, he was speaking, and where he was in Caesarea, which is right in the Mediterranean Sea, when the sun comes up, the sun was shone off of his glittery outfit. And the people, said to him, he's a god. Now, wouldn't that do something for your pride? Would it make you feel good? When people started treating like a god, that's pretty encouraging if you're a pagan. You know what God did? Some of you remember what he did? It says worms ate him. And what do you think would happen after worms eat you? The next phrase is, you can predict it, and he died. Thinking, yeah, but what's in between that? Josephus says, the first century Jewish historian, he went through three or 4 days of really horrible things. There's some other people that were really wicked. God judged him. One poor dude said that his bowels spilled out and he died. I thought at one time of Googling that. What happens when your bowels spill out? I decided, do I really want to know that? The answer is not really. So when God judges, don't mess around with the Lord. So what's the answer to pride? Check yourself. Be accountable to somebody. And give someone else permission to get in your face. If they see you going in the wrong direction in that area or any other area, then give them permission to say, babe, I see you going in the wrong direction. Watch it. Now, the agreement is you allow them to do that to each other. You allow them to do that. But you don't get mad at them. Because if I tell Ryan to tell me, and I expect you to do this, if any of you see me go in the wrong direction, or Ronnie or anybody else, your job is to come and tell us. And the right response is, thanks for telling me that, and we take this before the Lord. So they said, come build this great city for ourselves. And they want it to be so high that it would bring glory to themselves. So they sought self-glory instead of God's glory. Remember Jesus getting on the Pharisees for the same thing? Now when there's a banquet, Remember Jesus says that the day Brewer shouldn't sit in the head place of the banquet. Why is that, by the way? I see the head place where the most important people go, and I go right there. I sit there. Why not? What happens if the master comes in and says, no, you're going to go in the lowest place? That's embarrassing. So let other people raise you up. Don't. And also, the Pharisees loved titles. They loved to have them, other people. Is there anything wrong with titles? Not necessarily. Not necessarily anything wrong with titles. What if you love to have people call you by titles? See the difference? The Pharisees loved that. And Jesus opens a double-barrel shotgun in Matthew 23, metaphorically. Read Matthew 23. He completely blasted the Pharisees for the pride that they had. Why do you think they disliked him so much? By the way, not all the Pharisees were bad. Some were godly. So they said, let's build this great city for ourselves. Again, they're trying to bring glory for themselves and not for the Lord. Now, remember I said to you before to look for this phrase? Those two words, not phrase, two words. Come, let's. Now look for it. Oh, we'll get there. This will make us, you see the pride there? This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered worldwide. Who had given them a commandment? In fact, Ryan, you made a joke about Sandy's family with grandchild number 41. Remember what you said? You've taken that. Now, along with that, be fruitful and multiply and what am I doing with my hand? Ronnie, I hear Ronnie saying it. Yeah, fill the earth. So look at this. This will keep us famous. It's all about me, right? No, it's not all about me. And keep us from being scattered worldwide. Have you ever disobeyed the Lord and then He makes you obey Him? He's done that to me. It's very embarrassing. Because the Lord's saying you either do it the easy way. You ever say this to your kids? There's two options. There's the easy way and there's the hard way. Guess what? They both lead to the same place. So with our kids, we'd say there's an easy way and a hard way. Either way, you're going to do it. Now, you can do it the hard way and you're going to go through some pain and you're not going to like it. Or you can willingly do what we're asking to do, and that's a lot easier for you. But I guarantee you're still going to do it. By your choice or not by your choice. So God's saying, no, you will be scattered worldwide. But they didn't want it. They didn't obey the Lord. So they're in defiance of the Lord. So what does He do to force them to obey Him? Let's see. But the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower and the tower the people were building. Look, He said, the people are united and they all speak the same language. Not necessarily a bad thing, right? To speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. That doesn't mean exactly everything, but notice the irony here. The people in their arrogance wanted to build a skyscraper, but from the Lord's perspective, this is Ron Rhodes saying that it was so small, they had to come down to see what it looked like. They said nothing will now be impossible for them. So if they succeeded here, then there would be no limit to their rebellion. So do you see this as, in a way as being God being merciful to them? By not allowing them to go further with their wickedness? Because with God's judgment upon people, the judgment is based on like how much a person knows. That's why it says in James 3:1, let not many become teachers. So as believers, the more we know, the more we're held accountable. But for unbelievers, they have a different judgment. Their judgment is not all the same. Not every unbeliever receives. They all go to the lake of fire. But not every unbeliever has the same level of the lake of fire. We're not sure how that works. But he said to come down and look at the city and the Tower of Babel that they were building. And they said nothing would be impossible for them. So they would seek to build their human kingdom to the exclusion of God's kingdom. Now, do you see these two words again? Everybody said to look for that? This is the Trinity, possibly, at least a hint of it. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other. So what's going to happen? See the contrast? The people earlier said, come, let us build. You contrast that with, now God says, come, let us. So what's God's answer to their arrogance? He's going to make them. Make them do what they should do. So he did disperse them. So he scattered them all over the world. See, they did what he said to do initially, but they refused, and they stopped building the city. Why is that? Can't communicate. That's why the city was called Babel, because that's where the Lord confused the people with different languages, and this way he scattered them all over the world. So we're going to continue this next time, but a few life lessons. Is there anything wrong with ambition? Shouldn't we all have ambition? Where does it get in the negative? If we're ambitious without the Lord, like they were ambitious, but they were leaving out the Lord, doing it in defiance of the Lord. Like actually, humility is a better way. I like what Corrie ten Boom said, if you don't know who that is. When I was in Holland years ago, I went to the clock shop that her dad owned, and she was shielding Jewish people in Amsterdam during World War II. But they really paid for it. They all got put in prison. Her dad didn't last very long. Her sister Betsy died. The SS guards killed her shortly before she was released. And she came to my church in Arizona many years ago, Corrie ten Boom. She was once asked if it was difficult for her to remain humble. She replied simply, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday and on the back of a donkey, and everyone was waving palm branches and throwing garments on the road and singing praises, do you think that for one moment it ever entered the head of that donkey that any of that was for him? I'm guessing no. Her point was, if I can be the donkey on which Jesus Christ rides in his glory, I will give him all the praise and all the honor. So doesn't the Bible say that God exalts the humble? James says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will fill in the blank. Exalt. What happens if I exalt myself? See the opposite. And that's very, very embarrassing. King David humbled himself, and God exalted him. So do you ever struggle, don't answer this, because we're going to all answer yes. Do you ever struggle with the temptation to be prideful? So what steps can I, Dave Brewer, take today to help me with that? Something for me to think about this week, something for you to think about as well. So read James 4 later on, because it's very, there's a contrast with what James says in James 4 with the rebels' mindset to exalt themselves. So how about if we contrast, before I close, the unity that the humans saw at Babel with the unity in Ephesians 4. Paul says that we should have unity. In fact, we need to work hard to preserve that unity. And Ronnie, a couple of months ago, taught on that in Adele. Quite a while ago, right? Now he's done Philippians and Colossians and 1 Thessalonians and 2 Thessalonians coming up here. Brother John will be doing. Pray for him as he kind of takes over what Brother Ronnie has been doing. But we should be unified, but unified for the right thing. So next week I'll continue on with this. This is just like a little bit of a foretaste of what we'll talk about next week. Will be part 2. And then we'll talk about then more detail on the false prophet and then the Antichrist. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for your mercy and your grace towards us. help me today to be humble and bring people into my life if I go in the wrong direction. Thank you for Jean and Eric and Ron and many other people here that I know that they will confront me if they see me go in the wrong direction, to help us to be open to that. And for those that aren't a believer, listen either now or online or later on YouTube. Just we encourage them to place your faith in your Son to receive salvation before it's too late. And we pray for these things in Jesus' matchless name. Amen.